Developing a recipe that really nails the perfect low-carb pastry for baking has been a real mission of mine, and one I'm really happy to say I have cracked. Now I'm sharing that recipe with you guys so you can once again enjoy the simplest dishes like quiche and even pies again with this perfect crumbly pastry. In this episode, I'm focusing on the savoury version of this, but you'll find a link in the description below to my butter-filled rich shortcrust pastry for all those amazing low-carb desserts you want to make and enjoy. Now, I'm going to be using my second most used machine in the kitchen, my food processor, to help me prepare this today. Not only is it a massive time saver, but it also helps as it will take my ground almonds down to an even finer consistency and give us that smooth paste that we're used to. I would even challenge you to tell the difference. For this recipe, you'll want 100 grams of almond flour, 100 grams of vital wheat gluten, and 100 grams of lupin flour. Now, a lot of recipes call for coconut flour, but I don't like the taste and texture that adds to a savoury dish. And lupin flour has the same 7.5 grams of carbs per 100 grams as coconut flour, so it's a better ingredient in my opinion. We're going to use a teaspoon of xanthan gum. That's just going to help things stay a little bit more flexible. We have a pinch of pink Himalayan salt. We always use that in our cooking on keto. Following the traditional recipe of half fat to flour in pastry, I'm using 75 grams of bulk standard lard. Lard is a monounsaturated fat. It's one you are allowed on keto, so it's fine to use in this recipe. Our secret ingredient to keep our pastry crisp and give it that nice crumbly texture is white cider vinegar. Now, this has quite a pungent aroma that you will smell while you're preparing your pastry, but once it's baked, that flavour will dissipate and you will hardly know it was there. I'm going to use just a little bit of coconut oil to line our springform pan. And finally, I've got 40 ml of cold water just to bind all of this together in the mixer. You may not need all of this, and we'll add that just a little bit at a time. So we'll start by adding all of the dry ingredients into our food processor. You don't need to grate any of these. This machine is going to chop them up really finely for you. A lot of other recipes I've seen for keto pastry use cream cheese and all sorts of other strange ingredients. I don't understand why we don't just follow the same path as traditional pastries and just swap out the ingredients for lower carb versions. And that's really all I'm doing here with mine. So that's our dry ingredients in, and we'll just pop that on. And we'll just let the blades take those ground almonds down to a much finer consistency. Let it run until you can see the dry ingredients actually starting to clump a little bit. Then we'll add in our cold water. You can always come in as well and just pulse the mixer. That just helps to shake things up a little bit inside the dish. Now eventually you'll see that this will start to clump up because the oils and that bit of moisture left from the nuts, that will start to get into everything else and make it bind just a little bit. Yeah, that's looking good. And already, if you pull some of this out, you'll notice there are no large parts of almond flour in there. It's all been really heavily reduced down, and that's going to give you a really fine pastry. So we'll pop that back in, and we can now add in our cold lard. Now, make sure this lard has come straight from the fridge. You want lard to be as cold as possible. You want pastry to be as cold as possible. That's going to help it be more rollable and really maintain some elasticity. So we'll just pop that on. Now I'm just going to wait just 30 seconds for that lard to start blending into the dry ingredients there. And you can see that change happening right now. It's becoming much more granular. There we go. If I stop that and we pull that out again, you can see that's actually clumping together already just with that lard in there. It's a really different texture than we just had a moment ago. Pop that back in. Right, there. Now, our last stages, I'm going to add 10 ml, just 10 ml of our white cider vinegar. I'm using a 5 ml spoon measure. There. Now already you can see this is starting to ball. Now I'm going to slowly add my water. And the machine is just going to do the work for you and turn that into a perfect paste. And in a moment, it'll just start to ball and whiz around the machine. And there it goes. And that is your pastry made. Now all you need to do is take this out. We're now just going to scrape all of this out of here, wrap it up in some cling film and pop it in the fridge for an hour. And then all of the dry ingredients in there are going to take on all of that moisture and absorb that. And that's going to give us that nice, typical, smooth pastry that we're used to. Let's just pull all of this out, have some cling film ready. And you can see this is smooth, like putty. It's a wonderful consistency and just what we want for our pastry. Now I've prepared enough here to do my quite large pie tin, so you can upscale or downscale this recipe to really fit your needs. Just keep it that same half fat to flour recipe and you really can't go wrong with it. There. So we'll now pop that in the fridge. That'll stay there for an hour. And while we do that, I'll have a clear up and you can have a break. Welcome back to the Low Carb Cook. You join us after an hour when our pastry has been chilling down in the fridge and that now is ready to roll out. So we're going to grab that from our refrigerator, bring it back to our worktop. I'm going to use some more of our looping flour just to dust this surface. There still will be a little bit of stickiness to this, so we just want to make sure that it's not going to stick down to our worktop. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sort of roll it around and coat it in some of that flour to stop it sticking. But you can see already that it's a firm consistency, that putty-like texture. There, and that's ideal. Now, for my rolling, this is one of my favorite toys in the kitchen, my basic rolling pin, but I have these fantastic little silicone discs on the end, and they come in several different sizes. You put one of those on either end and they just help you to roll out your pastry or marzipan or icing, whatever you're working with, to a very specific thickness. So you can just start by gently rolling it out. Keep turning it as you're rolling it, just to help spread that out. Now I'm going to be filling with mine a 10-inch springform pan. Just to quickly show you these. These are great for when you're cooking something with pastry like a quiche. You can simply, once it's cooked, remove this base and release the entire piece, and it's so much easier to release then. So we want to make our pastry first of all in a disc to fit the base, and then we'll make the ring to go around the edge. So again, keep dusting with your flour and turn this periodically, just like you would with any traditional pastry, and also put some of that on your rolling pin. Again, you can upscale this recipe, downscale this recipe to give you as much as you need for whatever you're making. Now I'm just going to turn my pan upside down onto this, press it down. Now I know I have my perfect circle to fit inside, and what we'll do to stop our pastry sticking, I've got some coconut oil spray. I'm just going to spray that on the inside of this pan. Coconut oil, again, something you can have on keto, no problem at all. So I carefully lift this up. Look at that, wonderful. And I'm going to lay that into the bottom of my springform pan. And there you have an absolutely perfect fit. Put that aside and I'll bring my pastry back. Any bits that escaped, just grab those, bring them in. redust my surface. And this time, I'll start squashing this into a length. So I want this to be wide enough that it's going to be just poking above the top of our pie tin. And again, those rollers on the side of the rolling pin just helping me to make sure that this gets rolled out to an even thickness. And it doesn't matter if you do this in stages, that's perfectly all right. I want one flat edge, so I'm going to use a pizza wheel cutter just to roll along there to give me a straight edge. Bring back our base. Now I already know this isn't going to be long enough to go all the way around, and that's fine. We can bring this back and roll out the offcuts, and they'll finish going all the way around. There we go. This is where you may start to realise I am not a professional cook, and I've never claimed to be. Just take a knife. I angle mine up slightly so there's a little more poking above the top. And by pulling the knife back towards me, it's kind of forcing that pastry that's there to stick, which will help to stop it collapsing into the dish. Take our offcuts. A little more flour. And again, because we're doing this in sections, it's great that I know that this rolling pin is going to make this the same width every time. So again, get my clean edge. I can see I only need a few inches there. Push that in. And just give it a push so it combines with the other pieces. Again, pulled back with my knife. And there we have one lined tin. I'm just going to seal around there by getting some water and a brush. And just by painting the water around that crease in the bottom corner, that's going to help that to bind together to form a seal. That kind of breaks down the mixture and this binds it together again. Okay, just run my finger around inside, get a nice smooth seam. Now I'm just going to prick the bottom to stop any air bubbles forming under the pastry and expanding. You can use the heat beads in the oven if you want to. Put a bit of parchment paper in the bottom of the tin first and put your beads in. But I find this particular pastry doesn't tend to collapse. So that's our lined tin. I'm going to blind bake this now for 15 minutes in the oven at 150 degrees centigrade, so quite a gentle temperature. Then we can bring this out and we can fill it. There we go, and while that's in, you can check out the macros for this pastry. So 15 minutes later, and that's been blind baking in the oven, and it's ready to come out now. So we'll just pull this out. Wow. And there is our blind baked base, ready for the filling of your choice. You can also use this pastry to line pie tins and make a great egg wash to give it a beautiful sheen on the top. You'll find various videos on my channel here where we use this recipe to make pies, quiche and more. So please do like, subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos. If you want to see what happens to this exact pastry case, well, follow the link in the description for part 2, where I'll be making a delicious quiche Lorraine filling and make this into an awesome low carb lunch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time on The Low Carb Cook. Hey, thanks for watching The Low Carb Cook. If you enjoyed this episode, why not watch one of our playlists or this recommended video? Click on the logo below to subscribe. Join us on any of our social pages, or if you'd like to show a bit more love, you can support the channel on buymeacoffee.com using the link below. For even more great stuff, check out the website, thelowcarbcook.com.